Hey guys, I want to tell you about one of our newest sponsors, Red Branch Outdoor Living. They create environments to bring people together by providing a turnkey solution for outdoor living with remarkable customer experience. They specialize in outdoor kitchens, pavilions, patios, pools, spas, and fire features. And they do it with integrity, innovation, and being remarkable. They did my outdoor space and it turned out amazing. Check them out at redbranchconstruction.com.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Overlap Podcast with me, Sid Sexton, and my good friend Keith Glines. Good afternoon, Keith.
Good afternoon, Sid.
You look great.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Because you just told me I didn't.
Well, no, I didn't.
You
say
used the
that.
word haggard.
Yeah, that's okay. So welcome to episode 131. We've got a friend in the studio, and he's got us kind of wound up, and so welcome, audience. The Overlap Podcast. If you're new, you're just kind of chiming in. The Overlap Podcast is where we study the overlaps between business, family, fitness, parenting, management, and really taking big business brilliance and sort of boiling it down to small business ideas.
That's right, Todd. Whatever energy you bring into the workplace is the same energy you're going to bring into the house.
I heard that in an energy audit podcast here, I think.
Yeah. Wasn't too long ago. And so we're kind of fired up already we've been chatting for like 30 minutes and we should have been recording this. We've got a good friend, Todd Greer, in the studio, and I want to introduce this guy and give him the proper introduction. Are you okay with that, Keith?
Yeah, he's way educated, way more than you and I.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. So Todd also carries with him a bio that he was able to just send me from his phone. And anyone with that sort of power, I think, requires me to go ahead and pay homage with reading the bio, which is Todd Greer, with 2 decades of on-the-ground work in a wide variety of organizations. Todd joined the Innovation Portal team with a background as an experienced startup advisor, educator, community builder, facilitator, and leadership development consultant. Prior to serving as the executive director of Innovation Portal, Greer served in multiple capacities at the University of Mobile, first as Dean of the School of Business, then Vice Provost, and finally as Vice President for Academic Affairs. Todd holds a PhD in Organizational Leadership with a major in Human Resource Development from Regent University. A passionate community servant, Todd has served as an instructor, volunteer, or board member for many Mobile area organizations, including the Minority Business Accelerator, I-Corps, the Mobile Area Chamber of Commerce's Young Entrepreneur Academy, the United Way of Southwest Alabama, Innovation Portal, and Mobile United, and currently serves on the boards of Real Advice Mentoring Program, or RAMP, Springboard to Success, Inc., Melton Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at USA. And we say for Midtown? Oh, yeah, for Midtown. That's quite a mouthful.
That is.
Yeah, I'm sure there's more to that. That's the condensed version.
Well, I mean, we're going to find out about it.
Yeah.
In this. I mean, if you read my bio, it would stop at, I wouldn't have what
grew up
Keith
in a single wide.
Single wide with his associate's degree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
hey, Todd, thanks for being here, man. And let me just say that Todd and I are both on the board for Energy,
yes, sir,
which is the EOS networking and resource group. We talk about that a good bit on this podcast, and that's really a free EOS monthly meeting where we discuss and teach various aspects of EOS and how it can relate or get implemented in your business, and then we've been in and out of the Innovation Portal a little bit here and there, and so happy to have you on, man. Thanks for being here.
It's so good to be with you guys. I think we are all appropriately caffeinated now, and so that's a really good thing. It does help quite a bit in an afternoon podcast. We're only going to go about 3 hours, so stick in with us. Get your belt settled in, and we're ready to rock and roll. Yeah.
So let's start with number one. Where'd you grow up? How'd that all happen?
It was a starry night.
Yeah.
And, no, I'm a native of Southeast Michigan, so I say all the time, here I am. Somehow or another, I have melted down the map, and we'll get into that a little bit as we go. But I grew up in Southeast Michigan, so I grew up between Detroit, Toledo, and Ann Arbor. So
is Detroit Southeast?
That it is. Yeah.
Where does Scott grow
Canada.
up? What's the town Scott grew up in?
Dundee.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
that's
Dundee.
Literally in my county.
Oh my gosh, really?
Oh, really?
It is a small
world.
Yeah. So they were.
So did you notice that Todd pulled up the hand and the mitt, right?
I always tell people God loves Michigan best because it's literally the back of my hand. I can tell you where everything is.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm not sure that God does, but that's okay.
I mean, I'm not sure either, but it does make it great.
So the guy that doesn't like me to call him my personal trainer, because I'm not a very good representation of what he wants to show the world, grew up in. That's
Dundee.
Scott.
Yeah, that's Scott. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean that's not far from there. He probably was a wrestler. If he grew up in
100%.
I was going to say if he grew up in Dundee, he must have been a wrestler because they are like always the state champs.
That's the wrestling.
Yeah, that's him.
So you grew up Southeast Michigan?
Yeah, I will say like I was shaped a lot early on by sports. I'm a huge sports nut. My
we were talking sports gambling.
Yeah, we were. I will say I've never gambled on it, but it was very interesting for me.
Yeah.
So I grew up, in the 80s and 90s watching some great championships and also some really tough times. I am a Lions fan, which until this last year was a thing that everybody would go, oh, I'm sorry. And this year it was like, you guys are awesome. So Michigan fan, yes, we won the national championship. Sorry for the people that are in this state that forgot what happened in the Rose Bowl after overtime or when overtime happened.
Yeah.
But I'll say I was shaped a lot by parents who are very committed to church and to service and to community. And I really lucked out. I mean, I lucked out at an early age that I had an opportunity to be in leadership. And so I got an opportunity to participate in different things, including our youth leadership program in our community. And it was like at that point, I really began to open my eyes and see, gosh, there is a lot that I take for granted. And if I want to make an impact on this world, I need to be ready to serve. I need to be able to serve others.
Oh, hold on.
Yeah.
Like, what age are we talking?
I was in 10th grade and I was really lucky. Now that doesn't mean...
That sounds ridiculously lucky. That's crazy.
But I'll say, like, it wasn't that became a firm, consistent thing always. Because, like, I was a knucklehead. I was 16 years old, when I'm going through that program. So it is what it is.
Where were you working at 16?
At 16, let's see. I think I had just started at the hardware store. I did a paper route from the time I was 9, though.
Okay.
So, like, working very early. I was very active in that. So had a job. I played tennis and baseball.
Yeah.
I was active in school and lots of leadership roles there. But it was watching the people around me. So, I mean, I see like my dad was probably the greatest influence in me because of that. And so it taught me a lot of things and I saw him be active. And so I got interested in politics at the time, got interested in working political campaigns. So, fast forward, I go out and as an 18-year-old, I'm running a state rep campaign in Michigan. And then again, after we win.
State rep for who?
This is a guy by the name of Randy Richardville. He was a state rep in our county. Like he was, and this is where happenstance conversations happen. So his daughter and I were friends in school. And it was like, oh, hey, cool. That would be really neat. If he ever needs somebody, I'd love to come and, volunteer or whatever. And so it was neat. Was able to work for our Chamber of Commerce.
Did he win?
He did. I'm 2-0. I am 2-0. So ran 2 campaigns, was 2-0.
Wait,
and I retired.
You ran the campaign?
Yeah.
Oh, at 18.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll say
this guy did not have a big budget.
No, actually, well, I will say, thankfully, running the campaign meant I ran the day-to-day, but there were other people around it. Now, my second campaign that I ran at 20, and that was strategery, to use a George W. Bush word.
Oh, yeah.
It was a lot of work that went into that, and we were really, again, all the things that you learn about a lot of hustle.
Yeah.
Getting out and doing the dirty work in a hard way in the sense.
What is the dirty work?
The dirty work is door knocking.
Okay,
so,
not signing up dead people.
No. Thankfully, it was nothing nefarious, but it's always about like, if you go out and you meet people where they are, you meet them at the door, you meet them in the conversations in other places, you build that rapport with people, good things come out of that. And that was the big thing for us. And then also,
that is still the strategy.
100%.
Like my wife works a little bit in that world and they still door knock.
You have to.
And I'm like, I'm not going to knock on these people's door.
Admittedly, it is way too hot down here that I would struggle with that. Because part of the reason I think that's why primaries are so early here is like our primary was in August, and I remember thinking, "Oh my word, this is the hottest that it could ever be."
Like she brings teams together to go do this.
Well, you have to have great data.
Yeah,
that's the other piece to it. Is like you have to have great data because you go to somebody's door. Hello, Mr. Smith. You're like, no, that's not me. Mr. Smith died 5 years ago, and obviously your data is outdated.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's a big deal, and I think that goes a lot into like just the way that I was formed is looking at that. I also
Sid, what were you doing with your life at 18? Were you running political campaigns?
No, but I did page for a state senator. And I was kind of interested in politics a lot. I had a great civics teacher.
That's it.
And he really got me fired up. And my mom was the county court clerk. So I went and worked there some. So I was working in the courthouse and all that. And I either wanted to be a lawyer or a politician. And then I went to college and did not want to at all. I was like, man. Yeah. I don't want to read that much. Yeah. And I really didn't want to be a politician after I kind of got into it. I didn't like it.
But my
mom always ran as the court clerk. And I was like, oh, I can do that. And I didn't want to do it.
What did those early lessons teach you, though?
Well, I do think, I did have to hustle. I did have to work hard. I did have to meet and talk to people. I did have to sort of carry myself in a professional manner. I did have to look adults in the eye. And I really kind of learned yes, sir, no, sir, please, and thank you, and kind of show up and do what I said I was going to do. Things like that. And I saw real professionals sort of working systems and things, I don't know. Those were the things that sort of struck me.
Sure.
And and how people carried themselves too.
It's the same stuff that you're working.
That guy's important there. Look at him and look how he's sort of handling himself, and he comes prepared, and he's got all of his stuff ready. That's I remember that.
It's big carryover. Yeah. And I think one of the other things that you have to look at is how do you use what you have? Because look, the reality is, I grew up in a very middle class family.
Oh yeah,
me too. And it was a lot. I remember one of my favorite stories about childhood is, and I told this at my father's funeral, when I was given one of the eulogies, I said I remember my dad. My dad was one of those people, very money intelligent, but we grew up without a lot, and so you just learn how to deal with things. But I remember my brother and I had, like I said, we ran paper routes, so we were making our own money as adolescents, and we were like, hey Dad, this is the early days of the Nintendo. Like, Dad, we want a Nintendo. And he's like, great. So we'll pay for it. And he's like, great. And also you're going to get straight A's.
Oh, and
so we paid for it, and we had to get straight A's in order to be able to buy it. And I thought what the heck? This is my money. Here I am, 9, 10, 11, whatever I am at that point. This is my money. Not that I ever thought about what my parents pay for anything I have.
Never.
But I remember thinking you've got to put in the work. You got to put in the work. And I think that's such an important lesson in life. And so, making use of every opportunity you have is such a big deal. I was a community college student. I went to a large public, went to a small private. I went to 3 different schools in undergrad, went to 2 different schools in my master's degree. Finally, by my doctorate, I was just at one place. But I said it made me so well prepared because seeing different systems, seeing different approaches and styles, it taught me so much. And so, as I'm, later on in life working in higher ed, that taught me so much about the unique way that you have to think about what's your culture, How does your value proposition stand out in comparison to others? And what does it look like to just take care of people?
What does it look like?
Yeah, I think so much of it is you have to know what you have. You need to know what your assets, your resources are, and you need to know who actually needs those. And how do you match people to that? And I think daily still, it's thinking about, I'm not the smartest person in the world. Yeah, the PhD is all that is about endurance.
Yeah, it really is.
It's can you slog through all the challenges to keep on going because you're investing in yourself. And I think that's the same thing every entrepreneur. We were talking about before, like just the idea of, you can't jump out into something and think about being done with it. You have to put in the time and the effort, and then you have to give yourself, congratulations as you make those steps on the journey. You keep putting one foot in front of the other and you move forward. But I mean, I think a lot of it, like early on, it was seeing the way people approach things and having an open-handed response to people is such a big deal. And I'll give you later on in my career, this is right after I finished my doctorate, I was running a foundation, a nonprofit foundation that was really focused on how do you kind of build capacity in other nonprofits. And I had an opportunity to interview a lady by the name of Frances Hesselbein.
Okay.
And Frances Hesselbein, it's a great name. Frances lived to be like 105 years old.
Of course she did. Of course.
She won the Presidential Medal of Freedom in the 90s. Okay.
Whoa.
The highest honor a civilian can receive. She was named by Peter Drucker, who was her best friend.
Oh my God.
She was
the
Drucker's
godfather of management.
Exactly. Drucker said she is the best leader I've ever seen, regardless of organization.
Get out of here.
Absolutely
How have
amazing.
I never heard this?
This is she's one of those hidden gems. Okay, so I got a chance to interview her. I don't know if she was 99, 100, where she was, but here I am, like I'm a nobody, and I got a chance to interview her. And before we went on air, I said, Frances, let me ask you the question. Why me? And she said, Todd, I believe very strongly in the statement from Ralph Waldo Emerson: "Be ye an opener of doors."
Oh.
And I said, Frances, that's amazing. She said, Todd, you came prepared. You came interested. You asked good questions. You wanted to build this. I saw the reason to open a door for you.
How about that?
And what a profound, deep, and impactful statement that is.
That really is. Wow. Okay. What was the question? What was the number one thing you got from her?
Oh gosh.
Sorry, putting you on the spot now.
No, I mean, a lot of that's the most lasting
awesome
impact.
right there.
And then I'll tell you, if you've ever read Drucker, one of Drucker's most famous book is The 5 Most Important Questions.
Okay.
So I had an opportunity to interview her and Joan Cole. Joan was a co-author on an updated 5 Most Important Questions.
Okay.
And so we talked a lot about that and just the idea of, Drucker asked, who is your customer and what do they want? And are you constantly thinking about that customer and what it looks like? And again, I wasn't even necessarily living in the entrepreneurship space. I would say an entrepreneur at that point.
Okay.
But I learned so much that certainly has carried over and landed with every step, every day that I have working with entrepreneurs.
Let me tell you about one of our sponsors, Chris Drogmiller. He's with CMD Fencing. One, I really appreciate his support to the podcast. He listens to the podcast, but long before that, he has done several projects for me at my home, at our business, and the dude just does an awesome job. One of the things I really like about him is it's basically just him and someone that helps him. His attention to detail is phenomenal. The work is always high quality. If you've ever had a fence built, you know that the gate itself and how it opens and shuts is kind of the stamp of quality. It always works well. I've made him make some interesting kind of fencing where it's all horizontal. He had no problems with that, did a great job. And the guy is freaking awesome. He's easy to work with and he does a fantastic job. He's a firefighter. So he works 2 days on and 2 days off. So he comes in and knocks my project out on the days that he's off. And the dude's awesome. You can find him on our website, overlaplife.com. You can find him on Facebook, CMD Fencing. And let's see, his phone number is 901-484-5546. So if you need a fence, need some fence work, call Chris Drogmiller, CMD Fencing.
Sid and Keith, when I was on your podcast, I shared my story of how I was $250,000 in debt, and then how I turned my business around and grew it into a highly profitable, multi-million-dollar lawn and landscape business. I'm Steve Bousquet, and we've created a program consisting of courses and coaching that guide people through the process and tools I use to turn my business around and grow it into a highly profitable, multi-million-dollar lawn and landscape business. You can find out more how I did this by visiting greenprofitacademy.com or by going to Amazon and buying our book, Profit First for Lawn Care and Landscape Businesses, right on Amazon.
Okay, guys, everyone knows if you're a business owner, a business leader, or you're just a person in the world needing help with accounting, you need a real partner. You need someone that's going to listen to you and not just plug numbers in to make their job easy to do your taxes. At least that's what I want. I've been through a lot of accountants in my life, and I have yet to find one even remotely as good as Johnny Baranco. He's the owner of Baranco and Associates, and he's the kind of guy that really doesn't manipulate your books to make his job easier. He really is trying to give you insights into your business or into your financial planning world. Whatever your goals are, he's there to help. And so I just encourage you to give him a call. Baranco and Associates, look him up online. It's barancoandassociates.com and just see if he can help you. He really is the accountant that I recommend to everyone, even before he was a sponsor of the podcast. So please, if you need an accountant, just do yourself a favor and give him a call. Gotcha. Man, I got so many questions. I'm just gonna make some notes.
One of the things
here
that really impacted my life, I had a mentor one day when I was in the corporate world, and he looked at me and he said, if you can learn to become a connector, if you can connect people together, then you'll be successful. He said, that's all sales is.
Yeah.
It's who can you connect with someone else and put your product in the middle.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing because once you know somebody, you know what they need, you know what they want, you know what matters to them. It's funny that you say that, Keith, because I would say at my core, that's probably the biggest value I bring. I'm a little bit of a geek when it comes to collecting things.
Okay. For instance?
Yes. So my wife's not listening to this, hopefully.
No, she's
I
not.
love
No one
sports memorabilia. So my collection grows of sports memorabilia, cards, helmets, signed things, signed baseballs and basketballs and hockey pucks and jerseys. And
give me the top three.
Yeah.
Treasured
I'll give
items.
You, a former boss gave to me an Al Kaline signed baseball. All right, so Al Kaline is a Hall of Famer from Detroit. He was a Detroit Tiger. Kaline was one of the most profound, impactful Tigers in the 60s. So he won the World Series with them. But he was one of my dad's favorite baseball players.
Okay.
And so for me, that's a treasured one. Another one I have, Justin Verlander signed baseball.
Okay.
So for me, I
really like his wife. She's nice. Yeah.
Kate, hi, Kate. I know you're listening.
Oh, yeah, totally. Totally.
Long time listener, first time caller.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so those are big ones. And then, because I'm a big Michigan fan, I've got a lot of the guys that went through there. I just got a Colston Loveland. Colston is their All-American tight end who's going to be probably a first rounder next year. So, I love that. My second piece, and probably the biggest piece that has been there from a collection perspective, is books.
Okay.
My library is extensive. So I have my physical library. I have my physical library at home. I also have my digital library. And really, that was one of those things. I'll tell you, a mentor of mine when I was in ministry, he said to me, he said, look, Todd, he said, there's a lot of addictions that can be really bad. He said, books are one of the things that you don't need to like curb yourself from.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, check.
Yeah.
That means
Noted.
I can forever buy books. And so, you talk to everybody.
I might have a little addiction too.
Okay. I
Yeah.
love that.
A little bit.
I'm a Goodreads guy. So like every year my goal is out there and I have to do that. I'm an 85 books a year kind of guy.
Oh my, not me. I'm like 10.
But if they mean something to you, and you go deep, that's great.
Yeah, I do. And I had to cut those back because I'm the kind of guy that I'll read it and like, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing like today.
Okay.
We are implementing this thing that I just learned. And then I had to reel it back in because then that really causes way more chaos.
When you say 85 books.
Yes, sir.
Is that fiction mingled in there also?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It crosses all
I
over.
don't do the fiction thing. I can't do it.
You can't do fiction?
No.
Why?
I just don't like it.
Well,
Really? You're just not reading the right author.
No, I just don't like fiction. Yeah. Nope.
Do you watch shows?
Rarely. I like a good movie every now and then.
Do you know that many of the best movies came from books?
Yeah, well, sure.
I read Dune, and now my kids are all watching Dune,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh man, when I was your age, I actually read that. It was fantastic.
So I just wait for the movie to come out.
Okay.
But so I can geek out on business books though. That's business books, life books, philosophy books. You know that.
See,
that
I'll
kind
say
of stuff.
I had a hard time falling asleep when I was young, like getting my brain to shut off. Probably
I
around
can see that.
18, 19.
Yeah.
And so I started incorporating fiction books at the end of the day to help my brain transition from like real life and strategy and all that kind of stuff into fiction. And so now every night when I go to bed, my Audible timer is on for 15 minutes and I'm listening as I fall asleep.
So I'm naturally a creative. I make myself walk into the business world.
Yeah.
So I spend a lot of time in my, in a fictional place most of the time.
So you're creating, I mean, I think we talked about Rubin's book, right?
Right.
Yeah, the Creative Act. Yeah, I think when you get into those kinds of things, you play in. I think it's interesting though, like once you get the chance to really understand yourself and you start seeing your patterns,
right?
It's like, what should I do? So for me, it was like, I need my brain to turn off because otherwise it's dangerous.
Yeah, I can relate. I had trouble sleeping, and I would. It's kind of embarrassing, but I used to read Dean Koontz books.
Oh, there's nothing embarrassing about that.
There's nothing embarrassing
I would hide it. I would
That's
hide it from my bros.
Yeah, that you would.
I'd be like, they were like, "What's that?" Nothing.
I didn't.
Nothing over there. I'm like, but he's gonna kill somebody. It's gonna be awesome. So I don't know. I was like, I can relate.
But I mean, I think. In much the same way you're talking
Dean
about,
Koontz, Vince Flynn,
John Grisham, David Baldacci, Brad Meltzer. Like I was a huge, like thriller, judicial, legal kind of thing. All day, every day, I could consume those suckers.
So we have a book coming out this month in our publishing company from a LA judge.
Okay,
that wrote the Prodigal Son story.
Yeah.
Inside World War II. So I'll send it to you and you can read that.
That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Very cool.
So
I did read that. I do read. So the and that may be a lot of it. The manuscripts that we get through the publishing company, I kind of have to pick that.
Sure.
I will read. I don't want to say I read all of them. I read some of those.
You read enough if they hook you.
Yeah, but I would say that you and I combined, and if we throw Forrest in the mix, there still aren't reading 85 books a year.
No,
85. There's my question. 85?
Yeah, but
what's that?
I'll say to you, you guys are much better probably at working. Well, I know you are, Sid, because I know you live in that. And Keith, regardless of what you said earlier, is better at physical fitness. Like I probably have defaulted to that as like that's my way of recentering and getting to a point that I'm like, okay, cool. And then I'm a geek. I mean, to Keith's point, like the connecting piece, every time I'm talking to somebody, I'm thinking about like, oh, this book connects to what they're talking about. And then that's how I speak kind of that passion. It's like, oh, Keith, have you read this? So like when you identified the Rick Rubin book and it was like, oh, have you read that? I was like, yes, it was great. Like
that's
now
a
we
great
can
book.
geek out and talk about this. And I mean, like, we've talked about your one of your mentors, the chairman of the board. It's like reading those kinds of things and geeking out with somebody. To me, it's another way that we can create community, and I think that's such an important part of the human experience. I mean, I think coming out of COVID, it's like we sometimes forget like community and engaging with other human beings is really it's the value that gives us something special in life, is that ability to share with somebody else.
That's awesome. So let me go back just before we go forward a little bit.
Sure.
So community college.
Yep, community college.
And then you're making your way through that. How are you deciding what school you're going to go to and what you're going to study?
Girls.
Because you've got a lot going on. Girls? Hey, love it.
Yeah, I mean, my undergrad experience largely was shaped by, my girlfriend's in this community, and that works. And then I'll say, I had this point my junior year where I was at the University of Toledo, go Rockets. They're a good athletic school.
They are.
But I was a comm major. So like I'm comm undergrad, and I'm thinking I am going to be a political speechwriter, and this is my future. This is my future.
Yeah.
And what I'll tell you is like, I kind of found myself thinking, this program is not rigorous enough. And I know I'm the geek who is mad because I'm like, this isn't rigorous enough.
Yeah, I was about to say, dude, I'm glad you said it, because I was going to follow up with that.
Yeah, I've never been there.
Yeah.
Well, okay, let's put this in perspective. We played back then on Thursday nights so that we can get on ESPN, right?
Yes.
The MAC on ESPN on Thursday nights. And one of my professors, who I won't name, had season tickets. And so they would play a lot on Thursday nights. And so in a 15-week semester, you're supposed to meet 30 times. We were Tuesday and Thursday class, met 15 times. I got like as high of an A as you can get. But I'm like, man, this is a speech writing class.
Yeah.
Like I that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. And so really that became a point where I was like, I'm going to make a change, and I'm going someplace else.
Okay.
And I think that's one of the things.
So you transferred after your junior year?
I transferred after my junior year.
For your senior year?
For my senior year, and still graduated on time somehow or another.
Yeah. All of them transferred, huh? I was always afraid of that.
Through. Yeah. Enough that I made through.
Okay.
And I think, one of the things I'll say, and you guys have both been to conferences recently. One of the things that you'll hear people talk about is the law of 2 feet. If something doesn't attract you or interest you anymore, you got 2 feet. Get up and go someplace else.
That's a good point.
And I think that is something that's a really foundational piece, is like, this was no longer providing the value for the money that I was spending. So I was going to invest myself elsewhere.
So where'd you go?
So I went to a tiny college called Defiance College, which is great.
Yeah, that was a good move.
Yeah, it was.
God, how did I not know about this place? I would have.
Fort Defiance, Ohio. So Defiance College, I think I got my flyer for like, hey, you gonna give any money? It's the 150th anniversary next year.
Okay. Did they play Rage Against the Machine the entire time you were there? Or
I mean, I probably did.
Yeah,
that was the early 2000s, so it was very much the emo and punk and every bit of angst-ridden.
Yeah, I went to a couple of their concerts.
Yeah,
it was great.
I can see that.
Oh yeah, Defiance.
I'm ordering some swag from that college when we get out of this podcast.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, like I needed Defiance college shirt.
I mean, like, you think about that, like, and it's
that's awesome.
It's so sad because
can't believe it's not larger.
It's such a small town.
Oh my God.
I think about it. I'm like, wow.
You should have a bonfire.
I think my entire university was barely twice the size of my high school, but my graduating class, not my whole high school. My whole high school was like 2,000. I think the entire university at the time was like 900.
Oh, ouch.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay. So, what are you studying? Not comm.
I was comm. I stayed comm.
Really?
Stayed comm the whole way. I was a poli-sci minor until my senior year. They didn't have that minor. So graduated comm and was going to stay and do a master's degree there. I played tennis.
Okay.
So I was Division III good, if that tells you anything.
That tells me enough.
You get there not on an athletic scholarship, but you get on your academic scholarship. And so
that's right.
There I was playing, and that was great to be able to go back and play.
1 second while we're talking tennis. Yeah. What are your thoughts on pickleball?
Oh, I absolutely love it.
Okay, good.
I love it.
I grew up playing tennis a little bit. There was one in kind of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And we taught ourselves how to play. And
Yeah.
then I talked my parents into letting me go to a tennis camp.
Sure.
And I really like tennis.
It's
So
it's fun. And
but now
sport you can
pickleball
play
is,
forever.
oh, you can.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Okay.
So the one thing I
didn't know if like the real tennis people.
Oh,
I didn't
no,
know if they
it's
like look down on.
It's I mean, it really is. I love doubles in tennis. I played doubles a lot. And so being able to play for a long time is great. You see hand-eye coordination. It's a lot that happens there, reaction time, reading it, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, don't be one of the people, though, Sid, that ends up with an Achilles heel rupture or a torn ACL, because apparently that is the new gem for orthopedics everywhere.
Is it?
Yeah, because pickleball is creating it. And
yeah, that's what they said.
But it's because old people,
try to be young
like you
again.
and I,
Yeah.
go to play these sports, and they've not done anything in months.
So I played the Brazilians a
years.
couple weeks ago.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and the Brazilians, they get down with the pickleball. Jose. Oh,
Really?
He's good.
Well, yeah, he's playing a lot. Though.
Yeah, he's
I
playing
see
a
him.
lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you typically see it. I mean, what I found is a lot of friends, 40 years old, went out to play. The fad was growing, and the first time out,
They blew an Achilles.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah, maybe I need to watch out because I don't do anything like halfway. So
No.
stretch well.
however,
get out
I
there and
don't do that either.
So-
I don't
so-
stretch well.
so
I don't. I just go.
I've not played pickleball.
Oh, really?
Right. And people
You
tell
look
me.
like a pickleball player. I mean, like you got a tan and
Haggard.
everything. Well,
yeah.
This is-
What is that what that means?
his foot apparel.
yeah, apparel. Yeah. Not
There it
haggard.
is.
I was just
Yeah.
saying. You look. Yeah, you got slippers on and you got
Yeah, bro.
the hair.
Well, I'm going to. All professors are supposed to. I'm walking
That's
out
a
of
good
this.
point.
I'm walking out of this podcast when we get done and walking into the classroom over there.
Oh, okay.
So
Don't be late, though.
I'm always late. And
Well,
because
with,
I'm
with, with
what's
Todd
the
here,
rule?
we may be.
hey, no. So this is the deal. This is the trick. You give them an assignment,
Oh, that's how they start class.
a writing assignment in a creative class drives them nuts. And so every class we start with a visualization kind of,
Okay.
little process
Yeah.
with a writing assignment, because all creatives should learn to write
That's
because
a
they
great
do
point.
not know how to.
Do you let them use ChatGPT though?
I
Come on.
do,
Okay.
absolutely.
Because that's
Yeah,
as
because
long as
I
there's
feel-
constraints.
Yeah, and so if they're not,
Yeah.
I say they're stupid because, and I tell
Come
them,
on now.
I openly tell them that.
Yeah.
Look, if I ask you to write 600 words, don't write 600 words. Have ChatGPT do it.
Get a
because-
really good prompt.
We're,
Well-
we're gonna
well-
we're gonna cut that.
Well, this is
out.
the deal. This is
We're
the deal.
not- like they got.
This is the deal. The future is prompts. It's not writing anything.
Well, and step back. I mean, I think about
Yeah.
we're all
Yeah.
near enough in age to each other. Like,
Yeah.
you remember that point where your teacher said you're going to have to learn all this math because
Oh my
you're
God!
not
I
going to have
know.
a calculator in your pocket. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, I don't.
And
Yeah,
I learned that
supercomputer.
math.
Yeah,
I learned
right.
that math, and
No,
I can't.
don't have a calculator. I,
remember
have
any of it.
Siri. I can ask it.
I have a
Oh, yeah.
supercomputer in my
Yeah.
pocket. And I think, that goes into a lot. But how do you read your setting? How do you understand your context and work in that
Speaking of that,
environment? So,
I was looking at the phone that you use. Is that the new AI that has fully functional AI inside of it?
Does not. This is the chipset right before. So this is the OnePlus 12 that I'm using right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, gotcha.
I don't even know what y'all are talking about, but
Well, he's on one. He's got green text.
Yeah.
But
I am that guy.
yeah,
yeah, he's that guy.
yeah. I
You
saw
remember
it.
the geek part?
Yeah,
that-
yeah,
yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
That goes so many
Yeah.
stories that sit there in the geek part.
Okay, so graduate comm
Yep.
major was a poli-sci minor, but they didn't have that. So
Yeah.
where do you go next?
Yeah. So I took a year off, and I'll say one of the things that was very interesting is
And that is interesting.
I almost went to New Mexico State for political communication.
Have you been to Las Cruces?
I have not. But
Holy cow, you would have not wanted to go. So
That-
my son went
that was
to University of New
okay,
Mexico.
I see the
Yeah.
tag there, right?
Yeah, he
Okay.
was a Lobo and hated it.
Well, okay.
Well,
this
he
is-
loved the school. He just hated the town and the whole thing. you
That
know?
was the piece. My dad was like, he's like, you're pale as all get out.
Yeah.
You've got a car that's broken down.
Yeah. Well, you would
and
fit in there. That's
he's like,
it.
and you're going to move across the country where you have no support system.
Yeah.
I was like, well, Dad, I guess you're right. One of those times you begrudgingly admit that maybe you're not the smartest at 21 years old.
Oh, that's a tough one.
It
But it
really
happens.
is.
Yeah. About 21, you start to go, maybe I'm not the smartest.
That's it. Yeah. So I took a year off, worked in politics, worked in higher ed. And I say to people, I think there's an importance of not burning yourself out, and so I think some people who go straight through, they lose the reason. For me, it was like when I work a job I don't like, to keep going, it reminds me of why I'm investing in my education.
Okay.
And so I did that. Worked in higher ed, worked in ministry for a number of years, worked in athletic coaching. I mean, I say when people, I'll give you that backdrop. Best story. I am in Richmond, Virginia.
Okay.
My wife is working on her PhD in counseling psychology. I'm working on mine in organizational leadership. And so a buddy of mine at church, he's like, hey, I want you to come and speak at our 8th grade program on your career. It's our career fair, career day. It's like, huh? About what? I was like, doctors and attorneys and all these other people have a very linear path. And I'm like, dude, I'm a mutt. I am an absolute mutt. And he's like, yes, I want you to come talk about that. And so I really, that was probably the first time I did a lot of that like self-discovery of going, well, what is it that is interesting about me in all of this crazy journey? And that goes up till now. And one of the things I realized in that is I looked at like, okay, what's your experience and what are the opportunities? So like what is in the past and what's in the future in regard to that field? What is your knowledge, skills, and ability? And where's your passion and your purpose? Like, where are those things? And if you can put all those together in a Venn diagram, I say the sweet spot is a thing that it may not be a job, it may not be a task, but it's going to be something core to your identity.
Okay.
That you begin to say, if I'm not doing this in anything, in a job, in a role, I'm not going to be happy. And mine was developer.
Okay.
It was, I love to develop people. I love to develop leaders. I love to develop startups. I love to develop organizations. I love to develop people. I mean, like spiritual development was a big part of it. Athletic development was a big part of it. Volunteer development, and like developing things. And it's typically like, I'm not the gem that starts this thing. I'm the person that gets a chance to come alongside you. I mean, so story brand world.
Oh yeah.
I get to be the guy.
You're the
that
guy
comes alongside you. And that, to this day, I mean, I tell people all the time, I get a chance in this startup world to scratch my itch of being able to help so many people at so many stages of their growth because I'm passionate about taking and helping somebody from where they are to what's possible.
So are you Obi-Wan or are you Yoda?
I feel like it would be sacrilegious to say I was Yoda. So I'm going to go with Obi-Wan.
That's a good one. That's a good call.
My mother still cannot verbalize what I do for a living.
Well, neither can I.
Yeah.
Like people ask me and they're like, well, what does Keith do? I'm like, I really don't know, man.
Well, see, and I like it that way.
Yeah.
See, what's funny is undercover, Keith is probably like CIA and all this stuff is a front for his work.
It is a front.
That's great.
He's a federal agent. Okay. So that was a winding road to get to. How do you get to University of Mobile?
Yeah. So end up, my wife and I moved down to Mobile and two things that are misnomers people have is one is I am a Greer, but I'm not from Mobile.
Yeah.
So that was one of the first things I got like, oh, are you one of the Greers? I'm like, well, yeah, I'm a Greer, but not one of those Greers.
Not the grocery store Greer.
Like I'm not famous. I'm not rich. I'm a kid from Southeast Michigan. So that happens. And then the other is like, we came here for my wife's job. I was the trailing spouse who she was a professor when we got here at Spring Hill College.
Okay.
And was teaching psychology. So we're moving at the time from Richmond, Virginia, the Virginia area.
We spent a lot of time there.
Gorgeous area. And we end up falling down the map. I had been to Alabama literally one time before we came shopping for a house.
Yeah. I'd never been here before I moved here.
Weird stuff, right? And so you end up in a place.
And I came here with my wife too.
There you go. I mean, you end up here and mine was like, okay, well, I'll figure out something to do. So I was working remotely, still running that foundation that we were talking about.
Yeah.
And was very heavily interested at the time in this concept that was growing across the country and across the world called co-working.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is really fascinating. You know, in 2013, early 2014, I started to get interested in this and learn more about it. And I was like, okay, so covertly, this is like a church community in some ways of like just the relational aspect. And it's a little political, and it's also the developing stuff that I really like. This is fascinating. So like, how do you do this? So I came to Mobile before we even got here. I'm like looking for the co-working space to start working out of. I'm like, I do not want to work out of the house. I will be miserable.
There's no WeWork office here.
No. There was nothing. And at that time, there was literally no co-working in Lower Alabama.
Yeah.
There was no co-working. And so I ended up coming here and gotten engaged with some folks who had just come from a trip to St. Louis with the Mobile Area Chamber of Commerce on their Leaders Exchange trip. They went to St. Louis, studied co-working, incubation, acceleration, all this kind of stuff. And I was like, well, look, I'm looking for a place. And like, oh, well, you should talk to these people. So I meet Elizabeth Stevens. In fact, just was hanging out with her earlier today. She's the president of the Downtown Mobile Alliance. Met John Peebles. He was one of the brokers, I think, with it was NAI Mobile at the time. It's now CRE Mobile. And they were very interested in this idea. And so we met, and then John and I and Alan Cameron, one of his business partners, we started the Exchange 202 co-working space, first co-working space in Mobile, one of the first, if not the first in the state. And so I started doing this work around helping people, and a lot of it became entrepreneurs. And so I kind of haphazardly was creating a lot of business content and helping entrepreneurs. And so the University of Mobile, the provost at the time, Chris McCarron, heard about some of the work that I was doing. And unbeknownst to me, they were looking for a dean in business. So we're sitting down and we're at Serta's in downtown Mobile. The first time we meet, and he's like, hey, I've heard about you, heard good things, blah, blah, blah. We're like 2 minutes in the conversation. He looks at me and he goes, and I want you to be the next dean of our business school. and I...
Now you had worked in education, higher education before,
I'd
right?
spent some time in that. But I mean, like I'll say like my biggest preparation was that I had gone to so many institutions. I understand organizations. I mean, that's my sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
I understand
Hence
organizations.
the organizational leadership PhD?
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And then I understand how to take and move something forward. You know, that's campaign stuff all throughout my career. How do you move the ball forward or move the ball down the field? And so I looked at him and I kid you not, like I said, that's not how this works. he goes, yeah, I know. And so, that led to me going and officially interviewing and having an opportunity to be able to work with a great group of people in the School of Business there for 2 years. And then, having the opportunity to move into upper administration. And I, hat tip to my friend Lonnie Burnett, who's in the last stages of his illustrious presidential career there at the University of Mobile. I served as the vice president for academic affairs, which is like you're working with all of your faculty, you're working with your students, you're working with the staff, you're handling a lot of different things, but you're very internally focused. And I think that was one of the things, like over the course of time, is like, man, I'm not at my best if I'm internally focused. I want to be able to have more outreach and impact in a community setting. And so that's really, I mean, I think it's one of those life lessons of like, you've got to know yourself in order to make sure that you're putting yourself in the place that you can thrive best and that you can impact others best.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to just eat eggs when I got the offer from Hatch.
Wait.
Like
Okay.
that was one of those deals. Like I literally
Hatch.
thought, yeah.
So eggs.
So-
okay.
Where are we
I
going?
just thought, see what I did there?
You did. You really threw me. I was like,
Yeah. So
where did you go eat eggs?
So literally, I thought I was going to eat
I don't
breakfast.
know if you need
Okay.
more coffee or less.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
Yes.
but I understand those
Yeah.
those moments when you get job offers from just
Out of the blue.
out of the blue.
You guys are lucky. I've never gotten a job offer out of the blue.
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't take it, but either way,
Well, it fit in the VTO.
It did in the Venn diagram in the sweet spot.
Yeah, in the
I
sweet
was
spot.
going to say, we're throwing some good language out here today.
Yeah, we are. I love a Venn diagram. Okay, so that didn't really fit as you moved into that. I did want to say this, a shout out to the University of Mobile. Like, I've never met someone associated with that school that I didn't like.
Yeah.
Like, for real. That's kind of strange for me. Like, I've never met, and I'm sitting here going through my mind, like, dozens of people that I'm like, man, they're all like super legit people.
I will be doing a podcast in the morning with another University of Mobile.
I mean, Chris Bell.
Yep.
Forster. Parker Elkins is from there.
Yeah.
Hayden, whatever. I can't remember his last name. I mean, just all of them. They're just all great people.
It really is. And I don't say like, I thoroughly enjoyed my time, love the people there. And I think you just get into that opportunity where you go, okay, what's the right place for you? And so, I had the pleasure during my time at the co-working space to help as Innovation Portal starting as a program inside of my co-working space.
Oh, man.
Okay, so inside of our co-working space, I should say.
Man.
So was able to work with them as that was getting started. And so I had actually been on the board of directors for, 6 years at that point. And so when I got asked by the executive committee to come in and run the organization as its executive director, it was like, oh, man, this is, there's a certain point, I think, when a setting that it takes a lot of guesswork out. I mean, the statement of the devil you know versus the devil you don't know is kind of one of those, like, you just know because you've seen people over the course of time. And so I in a lot of places, I think you go, no, I'm in a situation, things are good. But I knew the people, I knew the board. I mean, I transitioned literally from one meeting where I was sitting there as a board member to another meeting where I'm sitting there as the executive director.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was the absolute right decision, not because of a negative at the university, but because of the true positive and the way to get back to some of the things that I just absolutely thrived in and loved.
And, as you were talking about that, number one, we're talking about the Innovation Portal that's in downtown Mobile on, is that St. Louis Street?
St. Louis Street. 358 St. Louis.
We'll get to that.
Yes, sir.
And and really, I think maybe your time, and this is what I was thinking about, is that your time, especially that last portion at the university, just gave you the insight that this isn't the right spot. And then it just opened up for you to have that position at Innovation Portal, which is probably where you need to be anyways. So what is an Innovation Portal?
Oh, great question. All right. So Innovation Portal is a business incubator and innovation hub for downtown Mobile, for our region, for that focus. And really the entire framework, if you look at the word portal, all right. So portal is a connecting piece to our word that we used before, Keith.
There it is.
And it's also, we're in the Mobile area next to the Port of Alabama. Port Al. Okay. So you play into some of that.
Oh my.
There you go. So it actually used to be Port, capital AL.
Oh.
If you look at our early logos and those things. So you also know if you've got the old logo, if you still see it as capital Port AL. But yeah, it's about how do we connect and help people with any on-ramp into entrepreneurship and innovation. And so we look at this as like, hey, whether you've got an idea and you need a safe place to be able to think through that idea to figure out if it's worth something and that you can take the next steps on it, or you've got an existing business and you're trying to figure out how to scale it. We want to be there to help you because ultimately, for this work, it kind of sits in this broader arena that we refer to as economic development. So, economic development is a really important part of any community. It's how do we grow the businesses that are in an area in order to better support our tax base, our opportunities, our quality of life, the resources that can become here that can help a community thrive. All right. And we traditionally have looked at that in a big company environment.
Mm-hmm.
So this mass movement across the country is really, how do we take and think about it from an entrepreneurial perspective? How do we think about growing our own so that those companies will stay here, thrive here, and employ people?
Okay.
And really, when you step back and you look at it, if you look at most of the statistics and the research that's out there, like when I say most, I'm depending on the research that you're looking at, it's between 80 and 95% of all jobs that are created by entrepreneurs.
Okay.
Like that's huge. Yeah. And so for us, we look at a town like Mobile and this surrounding area, we think about how do we help people take that next step in their life. We've got a lot of people who they do have the idea, they do have the opportunity, they do want to take that and move that forward, but they've never had the support and the structure. They've never had the resources. They've never had the direction. It's one thing to have an idea. It's another thing to actually understand how do you bring that to fruition. Mm-hmm. We talk with people all the time about your idea, and we were talking about this before we went on, so I'll use the analogy. Every idea is an ugly baby.
Yeah. Okay.
Every idea is an ugly baby. And I say that like they're a gift. Yes, I agree. But just like a baby cannot do things for themselves, that idea is not yet in its fullest formation. It doesn't have the shape. It doesn't have the ability to move forward. And so what we want to do is we want to help people see that. I know, I think you guys were talking about this on a previous episode. We've got to be able to identify a problem. Entrepreneurship is all about how do we solve problems.
Right.
It's what's the pain that somebody is presently feeling. And if I cannot identify that, if I can't communicate that, and I can't figure out that there's enough people out there who need that and are willing and have already spent time and money trying to solve it, then I'm probably not on the right thing.
And so the Innovation Portal helps those people with an idea flesh that idea out and start to turn it into reality?
Absolutely.
And how does that happen?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So ultimately, we try to help people grow their business through, we talk about 3 or 4 different models. Okay, one is we think that a lot of times entrepreneurs, just like I said, I don't want to work out of the house. When you're working in isolation, oftentimes it's a very hard place. You're having a dialogue with a dog's like, yes, you're great, you're brilliant. You have a dialogue with a cat's like, you're the stupidest person ever.
Yeah.
Right? When we can be around people that we can see them really working, they're working to grow something, the energy is cathartic. I mean, it's something that really builds on us, but it also centers us to the point like, this is what entrepreneurship looks like. I can see it in action. I can grow my network. I can have these kinds of conversations that help me understand, like, am I even on the right track? So we talk about the space is a big part of that.
So coming to the open workspace.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and I'll give it as a, for instance, if you've never been to our space, we're about 30,000 square feet in the heart of St. Louis Street in the downtown Mobile in the Innovation Alley as it's growing. And really, we've got space that people are able to come in, they're dropping in, they're working. We've got people who that is their only office. We have people who that's one of the offices that they work from and they work out of. And so being able to be there surrounded by other entrepreneurs is a big deal. I mean, it's a super important thing. And we hear about it, the energy that it brings to other people. Energy is such an important part of this.
Well, and it's so easy as an entrepreneur to become an island to yourself.
Absolutely.
To just say, I'm the only one dealing with these problems. I'm the only one and we do a lot with that on this podcast.
Sure.
It's, just sharing it's funny. The episodes that get the most traction are the ones where we just share our problems. And so there's a huge,
we can all identify with that, right?
Yeah. So there's a huge bringing together of just ears to hear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
So one of the things that you do great is just create a place for people to come in and just have other ears to hear them talk.
Yeah.
So just on a nuts and bolts type level, like, so if I have an idea, do I just need to contact you and then I can work with you on getting a space and then maybe set a time to speak with someone about the idea?
Yeah, great question. So how the flow works. We'll talk a little bit about the flow. Yeah, so typically when people come to us, there's 2 reasons. There's 3 reasons they're coming to us. One is they're coming to us because they have an idea and they want to have a session. All right, and so we have, thanks to wonderful support from the city and county of Mobile, we're able to provide free of charge that intake session, that discover session, the opportunity to be able to help them navigate that process as the next step. So people come to us for that reason. They come to us because they're looking for space to work out of, or they come for us because they're trying to host a meeting of some sort. And so all of that happens through a very simple contact form on our website. And we set up the session. So when we are sitting down to meet with somebody, we usually have that first hour that we're sitting down and we're trying to understand, who are you? What are you working on? Who's the customer you're trying to solve for? What's the problem?
Okay.
And that's really what we're working to lay out. Because if we can lay those things out, then we can begin to understand how we can support you. So for some people, you're going to be working on stuff that's way outside of our field of expertise. But if we can align the right resources and the right mentors, that can help them raise that trajectory.
Sure.
For other people, it's helping them learn how to step back. Because I think a lot of times you talked about the big business distilled for smaller businesses. I think what happens is people incorrectly assume that a small business is just a smaller version of a big business.
Okay, good point.
And that's far from the truth.
Far from it.
Yeah. I mean, so there's a guy by the name of Steve Blank, and Steve basically is the father of kind of like this version of the lean startup or entrepreneurship as we look at it today.
Okay.
And he said, there is a search process before there's an execution process. And I think what tends to happen is we see a lot of people who go out and they start executing and they don't know who's my customer.
Yeah.
And they'll say things like, everybody's my customer. And my refrain is, if everybody's your customer, nobody's your customer. Yeah, you just don't have the money.
If you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talk about like, you've got to step back and understand your customer. You got to understand, what are they trying to do? What are the outcomes that they're looking for? Not what do they want to buy? We don't buy a drill bit, a 1/4 inch drill bit. We buy a 1/4 inch drill bit that makes the hole.
The hole.
That's right. We're buying the outcome. The tool is just the process, it's the means. And so they can choose a lot of options. And so we focus a lot on like, how do you understand what that person's trying to solve for? How do you go out and talk to them? We're in a program right now that we're teaching customer discovery. And my favorite book on this entire subject is called The Mom Test.
Okay.
Yep, the mom test. All right.
Writing that down now.
Ladies and gentlemen, what is the mom test? Oh, thank you.
Go right ahead.
Yeah. So the mom test is it's an amazing book. I want to say the author is Rob Fitzpatrick. And if I get that wrong, please correct me on an edit. But Fitzpatrick wrote this entire book, and it's all about the idea that we typically go out and we say things like this. So Keith, you're going to pretend to be my mom.
Hi, son.
That's great. I love that.
Okay. Yeah.
We say, hey, mom, I am going to build a startup that creates flying cars and solves that problem for everybody. And my mom definitely says, what?
Yeah, that's not going to work.
No, that's not exactly. My mom would say, and my mom is visiting with us, and I know she would say this. She would say, sweetie, whatever you do, you're going to succeed in. That's a brilliant idea. That's great.
Well, sure.
And so what ends up happening?
My mom would not.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And that's an important qualifier. Is know your audience.
Yeah.
Know your mom.
Yeah. Know your mom. That is a great. That is a great. I'm making a t-shirt.
Know your mom.
But what we find is they take that as validation and they jump into it, and then they go out and they execute on something, and they're like, a year and 2 years in, and they're wasting money and they're just bleeding dry, and they're unhappy, and they're asking like, where did I go wrong? And the answer is you relied on your brain and somebody whose life is connected to yours to validate. And so what we want to do is we don't want to go out and talk to people who are going to just validate us. We want people who are going to help us understand what the real problem is in the wild. So I always tell people, like, if somebody's not spending time and money to solve that problem, they're probably not going to pay you to do it. Right. So think about, in the world that we live in, creating a new customer out of thin air is really, really hard.
Yeah.
Right? But Sid,
or creating a need.
Yeah. I mean,
that's tough.
Like what you do. I mean, think about the landscaping world.
Yeah.
Like it's blazing hot.
It's pretty.
It's cut and dry. I mean, like, and
I
they
see
can
what you did there.
see. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
they can see that need all the time. I mean, like I think about it, I had to hire somebody to cut my lawn because I liked to cut it on my riding lawnmower until the engine pretty much blew up.
Yeah.
So like there's a pressing need all of a sudden. And that's true in almost any field. What I always say is a lot of people start as the solution in search of a problem. And that's a really dangerous place. So what we want to do is we want to meet them early and help them walk through that process.
So you're helping them with the idea and allowing or giving them a framework to gather some focus on moving that idea forward.
That's right.
You know?
I mean, the reality is entrepreneurship is not necessarily a linear process.
No.
But it is a process.
It is a process.
And it's a process that when you look at it and you go over and over, you've got to identify that problem. You've got to identify where the problem exists. Why does the problem exist? Is that problem connected to other things? And so we use this the approach of human-centered design. Like I want to see that customer.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know what's sitting there, not just the problem, but I want to see what it's influencing the problem. I want to see what's that environment look like. I want to see what they're trying. I want to see what they tried themselves and failed. I want to see what are those connected things. Because the reality is a lot of times, if you can do something well, people will hire you to do other things for them.
Oh, yeah.
And you look at that, you know, for say the landscape of things, look at that. It's like playing it again.
Yeah, I hear you.
Jeez,
I'm
you
just
are
running
just
through
a
running that through my mind too. So yeah, keep going.
Yeah.
I know where you're going here. Just land the plane.
And this is the beauty of it all. Is like when you start looking at that, all of a sudden you can start seeing. And so, like, you know, who does that serve then? I mean, I literally feel like we have served people in almost every type of industry. So people assume like it's got to be high tech. Well, it doesn't have to be high tech. Every business is tech enabled now. You don't have a business without a tech enabled framework.
Software, routing software.
Sure. I mean, you think about it, digital media, your social media, your marketing, all of that is coming in a tech enabled environment. And so we're constantly working to figure things out. So I'll give you this instance. A buddy of mine is in construction and he's like, Todd, I think I sort of understand what you do, but like, what exactly does this look like? So this goes to the Keith. Nobody actually knows what he does. And he said, like, you help businesses grow, right? And I'm like, yeah. I said, well, he said, well, what would that look like? And I said, well, okay. So you're in the construction industry. What is the number one problem in the construction industry?
Labor.
Okay. What is the number two problem in the construction industry? Where people are most upset in the construction space? I would even go beyond labor. Labor is what you say when you run the company.
Okay.
The consumer says poor communication.
Communication. Yeah.
Communication.
The second one.
Why did that price change? Why didn't you show up?
Yeah.
Why? What is going on? Why is it taking so long for this? Okay. So that's what we talked about. Is I said, look, if you could become the best communicative, it's another great word.
That's a great one.
Very good word.
On the shelf.
Yeah.
That is good.
If you could be the most communicative construction company in the area, you would win. You would win over and over and over and over again.
It's how you decommoditize yourself.
That's absolutely it.
And you add value.
Sure.
There's the problem you solve.
Everybody has that story of the thing that didn't work because they were so annoyed because this person, their work is good, but I can't trust when they're going to show up. That's it. It's how I feel. I'll say, if you're a doctor out there and you're getting ready to run a practice and you think about that, it's the same thing. I hate going to a doctor's office. I'll go to an urgent care every single time. Why? Because I'm like, I don't have 2 hours to sit there and wait, hoping that you're going to come in. This is the part where like sometimes Todd gets a little too high on his horse. I'm a doctor too.
Yeah.
I'm a doctor too.
Yes, you can pull that.
I can't afford to be that late.
Yeah.
I'm not that kind of a doctor, thankfully, and certainly I appreciate what they do. But it's hard. I mean, like I'm like if Chili's can give me a little buzzer to tell me when my seat's ready, the medical profession has got to be able to come up with a better way to solve that problem.
100%. 100%.
So I mean, that's like a glimpse into this stuff. And then what I'll say is like once people get up and running and they've got that, they understand who their customer is. They understand. Okay. And they've built typically a go-to-market strategy, which is really a fancy way of saying figuring out how to take all the things that we've been planning and implement them such that they can actually connect to a customer and make it easy for them to give you money.
Okay.
Okay. Then we want to help you scale. So how do you think about, if this is where you're at right now, is it addressing an opportunity for market growth? So I've been in this tiny zip code, and maybe I'm going to, address a new market. Maybe I'm going to take a physical store and I'm going to move it online. Maybe I'm going to take a physical product and move it into a digital product. There's just a lot of different ways that when we think about scaling, we can look at that.
Sid, that's when they move from the incubation stage to the acceleration stage.
Oh,
see, incubator, accelerator.
Oh, accelerator. Okay. So, staying in the incubation stage. Okay, I'm a guy or a gal that I feel like I have an idea, and I'm listening to this, and I'm kind of fired up about my idea. I'm gonna reach out to you. What do you need from me? What do you need for me to have ready to go, or what would you advise me to have?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I would advise anybody to have as they're coming to us is beginning to lay out and put it in a paragraph. Here is the problem I'm trying to solve.
Okay.
If you can crystallize the problem that you're trying to solve, we can build off that.
Okay. Gotcha. And then now, what other than being a really good sounding board and providing some focus for the idea, what other services or offerings does the incubation or innovation portal provide?
Yeah, so what we offer is we offer space with a lot of amenities that help people work and grow.
Yeah,
that's a really important piece we talked a little bit about before. But then
they got a great kitchen, by the way.
And if you go on the right day, they have great danishes that are just sitting out there.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, you got to. So Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, Keith is alluding to. Dropout Bakery is open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They make the most incredible food. So hat tip to them on this one. It's also why I don't look like I'm as in shape as like Sid does, even though we're both bald, bearded guys.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah,
you're doing cool stuff.
Thanks.
Your brain is big.
Yeah, you're reading 85 books a year.
85 books.
My push-up is the books that I'm reading.
Yeah.
So those things, space.
So you do that. But then a lot of what we need is we need to be around other entrepreneurs. So it's how do we foster relationships and connections? So
gotcha.
We're big believers that mentorship goes a long way in life. And so I think it's important for if you're starting and growing a business is to make sure that you're not trying to do it on your own. You need people who are invested in you without investing in your business. Okay. And I say this there's a lot of times we need the wisdom of those that have the scar tissue.
Yeah.
They've had some success, they've had their failures, but they're wise enough to know they don't know everything. Okay. And those are the kinds of people we want to help surround our entrepreneurs with, because you're going to go through that. There's a lonely piece. We talk about the trough of despair. You get going, you think you've got it figured out, and all of a sudden, the bottom starts dropping out.
Yeah.
And the reality is that happens to just about every business.
Yeah.
If it hasn't happened to you,
you're getting close to it.
Yeah. You're close.
Yeah. So you face that. And for most people, they think, I'm an idiot. I'm clueless. I should have never done this. All those things start going through their mind.
Oh, yeah. Lots of self-doubt.
And the reality is, it's just normal. It's just a normal thing.
Yeah, and I think we've had 3 or 4 different podcasts on that particularly. That subject right there. That the obstacle is the way.
Yeah,
and
thank you, Ryan Holiday. Look at you
thank
guys.
you about that. Yeah, another book. But that is that's the price that there is to pay. If you're gonna make sure, if you're gonna get that business or that idea off the ground and you're gonna make it something, you're gonna run into lots of obstacles. Trudging the road of entrepreneurial destiny. That's really what it is. You're just trudging sometimes, man.
And I'll say in many ways, it's like the doctoral journey. It's endurance.
It's endurance.
It's endurance. And you've got to be able to keep getting up, addressing the call, addressing that call to keep putting one foot in front of another. And I say this in a way of look, I want you, if something's not going to be there, I want you to figure that out quickly. Yeah. But if something is, and you've identified that you've got a customer, you've got a problem worth solving, and you have an opportunity to go and scale that where people will pay you money to build that thing or do that thing, you've got to keep going. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it.
Sure.
And that's where that endurance place really comes through. And so we want to put people with mentors. We want to build that network around them. We want to help them as they think about scaling that business. So we spend a lot of time working with entrepreneurs who are trying to take the next step. And a lot of times the next step means money.
Yeah.
And so it's, how do you get capital ready? How do you get ready for the money?
Is this the accelerator part?
That would be part of the accelerator.
Yeah, you can definitely do that. And again, there's a lot of language that's out there about, first round. What does that look like? Friends, family, fools,
seed,
angels, seed, series.
What is
A,
all that? There's so many levels that I don't know that everyone even knows what it is.
And frankly, money is really what they're all about. It's how do you find the money that helps you propel the business to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
So it's, it's some of that. Sometimes it's programming. It's the ability to bring in experts that are speaking on subjects that are of necessity to them. I mean, so everybody deals with this idea of marketing. You got to market your business.
You have to.
So you have to be able to understand, how do you connect the message? We talk about the same thing. Do you understand your customer? Do you understand where your customer is paying attention? There's a lot of noise in the world. I mean, how many podcasts are there now?
A lot. Everybody's got one.
Right?
Yeah.
And so in everything, you're working to get through the noise to get to the people who actually care, and then you want to build a relationship.
However, I did see the average podcast has 9 episodes.
Yeah.
And you
so
guys
if
have,
you can just
what did you say this is?
about
131.
131. We've been.
What's the multiple on that? Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot.
We just like pain and we're used to it. So
Endurance.
I mean, it's really endurance. It's all about endurance.
I was going to mention it on the endurance. The endurance part is not just going through pain just for pain's sake. You really are learning. Every time there's pain, there's a lesson to be learned there. And if you can kind of stick with it, ideally, you don't make that mistake again.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of young leaders right now. It's funny that we're talking about this because that's really what the young leaders we're having. This is the first spring they're going through, and they think that this is terrible. And I'm like, well, welcome to spring. This is it. But you're going to be so much better this time next year because you're going to already be prepared. It's not going to hit you in the face like it was. And I've been telling you for 3 months to do this, this, and this, and you kind of did it, but you kind of didn't. And so now you get to live with that. And if you can make it through, you'll be so much better prepared next year. And there's educational knowledge and then there's experiential knowledge. And you get and experiential knowledge just sticks with you. You have you feel it. And so I'm not going to make that mistake again.
Well, and that's one of the things I think if you see entrepreneurs, one of the things that they struggle with sometimes is the understanding of what's in front of them. What's that road in front of them? Because look, the reality is we see a lot of things that are out there that are just survivorship bias. I mean, it's like, we hear about Facebooks and Googles and it's like, yeah, that's really cool. And yeah, one day I'd love to be a unicorn. But the reality is, tell me about all the millions of companies who got from 0 to 1. Tell me about those that scaled a little bit. Tell me about those that failed and why did they fail? I want to be able to see those kinds of things. And so I think a lot of times there gets into, and I'm going to use the language here. We talk about overcoming what is, I say, entrepreneurship porn, meaning a false reality of what entrepreneurship is.
One of the terms that I hate to hear is scale quickly.
Porn? Oh.
We've got to get in, start this thing and scale quickly. It's entrepreneur porn.
Yeah, and I think we buy into those lies though.
Right. And so we buy into those lies that, hey, this is just because of YouTube right now.
Sure.
And people I was talking to a guy today that was like, I had no obstacle in starting my business. And I was like, you are rare, my friend, because I've had lots of them and it's taken me 20 years to do it. And so, I said, I'm so happy for you, but you are not the story that is prominent in the entrepreneur world.
I mean, I think it's much like the Beatles. The Beatles were the overnight success that was 10 years in the making.
Yeah.
Right? I think we're working through the process to get ourselves ready for it. Because there will be a point that scaling will occur. And sometimes it does happen exponentially, but it doesn't happen overnight. You don't go from 0 to 100 in a blink of an eye. You have to learn and be ready. Because the other thing is, if you look at, great book out there, again, Tony Hsieh, Delivering Happiness. This was the guy was the former CEO of Zappos.
Yeah.
Hsieh talked about like his first startup grew faster than he was ready for it. And a lot of times, if it grows too fast, too quickly, you're not ready. And so sometimes,
my first company,
sure.
My first company was that way. I say all the time, I grew broke.
Sure.
And so it grew so fast that it absolutely sent me to the poorhouse.
Yeah.
Okay. Man, we can go on and on about this, but what I really wanted to do with this conversation, and before we sort of start to try to shut it down, because I see you looking at your watch, I know. What do we need if we sort of if we just boil this all down and kind of give the listener, just one last summary of the Innovation Portal and how you can help? What's the message?
Yeah, ultimately, just if you're out there and you're thinking about building something, we want to be that partner that helps you in the journey. I mean,
Okay.
the guide concept that we talk about is we want to help make sure it's, as safe for you as possible, in the sense of like, you're going to get scars, you're going to get wounds, you're going to get those battle stories. We want to help you through that in as safe a way as possible. We want to help you navigate the challenges that go into this. And we want to see you succeed. Like, our win is your win. And so we want you to be able to come in and, whether that's the now, it's now for yourself, it's now for somebody or it's in the future. We want you to know that you have a resource in our community that is here and ready to stand up next to you and help you through the journey.
Man, I mean, that's freaking awesome. That, I don't know where you were 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's, we hear that quite a bit, Sid.
Yeah,
and
that's awesome though.
Yeah.
That's fantastic that people have that resource now. And it's probably much more needed now, especially with tech and all the different avenues that things can go. You probably need some guidance on stuff like that, and financing and funding and everything else.
Yeah, this whole incubator accelerator thing is growing all around the country. So if you're listening to us and you're not local, there's probably one of these in your city.
Exactly.
That's right. Yeah. So you will see,
or close to you somewhere.
You will see a group of people, whether it's a small business development center. You'll see groups of people like SCORE, the Society.
I went to SCORE when I first moved here.
Retired executives,
Yeah,
whatever
something
the
like that.
SCNO stands for. But you find these people, and I think this is a very intentional movement, because we recognize that this game is hard, but we also recognize we want to help you succeed, because when you succeed, it helps our community.
It helps
too.
the entire community. It's the same thing with that energy group, man.
Absolutely.
I just believe wholeheartedly that EOS is the best way to run a small business. And I believe it so much that I will spend the time to go and try to teach others. And then when I do, I learn. And then when I connect with some other people, I sort of get a little energy out of that. And it's just better for the entire community.
Yes.
Their team members have better lives. Their customers get a better service. Everyone's happier. So thank you for that, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for the work that you're doing here. So I see, if folks want to get in touch with you, LinkedIn's the best way. Todd W. Greer.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Todd Greer. You can find us online at innovation-portal.com. You can shoot me an email at todd@innovation-portal.com. And just know we're here, and we want to be able to work with you. We want to be able to help support you. And even if you're, as Keith pointed out, even if you're not in our market, we'd love to help you find the people that are going to help you in your journey.
Yeah. Man, and just the Innovation Portal itself and incubators, accelerators in general kind of embody a lot of just business principles we talk a lot about, Keith, where like there's the proximity principle.
Yep.
You're putting people together, and if you're in a group of other folks that are like-minded and moving in a certain direction, you get a lot of momentum out of that. If you're kicking ideas around, and you mentioned, I don't know if we were even recording, that there's lots of people with lots of whisper ideas.
Yes. Yeah. That's a big one. And I'll flesh that out, because I don't think we were at that time. there's a buddy of mine, his name is Brian Scordato. He's up in New York, and he does this kind of work with entrepreneurs all kind of throughout that region. And he said, like, there's a reality that a lot of times we have whisper ideas. We're afraid to share it. Either we're afraid somebody's going to steal it, or we're just uncertain in our own self. There's lack of confidence. And he said, we want to help people find the mountaintop experience, the thing that they're willing to shout and yell. And the term that has kind of come over the last few months that's really exciting is entrepreneur opportunity or entrepreneur problem fit. Like, we want to create those opportunities where it's like, oh yeah, duh, that makes sense that you would do that. You have been training for this all your life. And sometimes training for this doesn't look like, one thing. I'm a mutt. That makes me uniquely equipped.
Because you've seen a lot.
That's exactly it. So, I can see across a lot of different spectrums. Even working in different types of communities helps me all the time. Working with young people, older people, working in different races and ethnicities, working with people from different types of backgrounds across the spectrum. Like, I feel like in many ways, so much of my life, unbeknownst to me, was training me for this kind of stuff that now is paying off.
We talk a lot about faith in this podcast, and it's almost like the Creator has a plan.
I was going to say, it sounded like providence to me. Sounded like providence.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it. I mean, that's such an important part of this is recognizing how you are uniquely equipped.
Yeah. When I look back at my life, I was talking just last night to a group of people about when I look back at my life and I watch, it looks very chaotic in a way until I look back and say, hey, I think the Creator really had a plan.
There's a plan.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
Beautiful.
Well, Todd, thank you for being on, man. I know it was tough for us to get it all together, and but I really enjoyed having you on. We went even a little bit longer than usual, but I think we could have probably legit gone for 3 hours. So that just means we'll have to have you back on again.
That sounds great.
And is there anything else, Keith, as we want to kind of shut this thing down?
Go support our sponsors.
Yeah, man. Please support our sponsors. And hey, thank you, listeners, for sticking it out with us. We mentioned episode 131. That's kind of a significant run for a podcast, especially a little local podcast with a couple of knuckleheads that like to choke people. That's not normal. We really appreciate you guys listening. Please, if this podcast kind of spoke to you, or if you know someone that might need an innovation portal or something else like that, go ahead and share it with them. Like the podcast, rate us. What's the what? Give us a 5-star review. Anything less than that is unacceptable.
Yeah, just keep to yourself.
And please support our sponsors, because they actually make this thing possible. If not, we probably would have shut down episode 50 or something.
That's it. Yeah.
Thanks again, Todd. Appreciate you being on here. And man, I can't wait to have you back on. We could have gone about 18 different I have all kinds of little notes here, and then we better just leave it alone. Keith, anything else?
That's it.
All right, man.
Peace.
Look, not all of you have to deal with workman's comp, but those of you that do know that it's time consuming and it's a headache. Insurance in general feels like something that happens to you rather than for you. But partnering with someone that really knows their stuff, like Chris May with LTN Insurance, you've heard him before on the podcast, offers you the opportunity to regain control of your insurance. By collaborating with Chris, you have the chance to craft a personalized plan that ensures you receive optimal coverage at the best price. At LTN Insurance, their foremost core value is centered on education rather than sales. Their core value actually says, we don't sell, we educate, because they truly believe in empowering you, the customer, with the knowledge to make informed decisions about your insurance. That's whether you do business with them or not. They want you to be informed. So you can trust Chris and look him up, give him a call, or go to the website, ltninsurance.com.
Thanks, Sid and Keith, for allowing me this opportunity to explain why Pro 356 Consulting is back, again, sponsoring and supporting the Overlap podcast. Number one, I just have found that this is a great podcast, that I share your values of the overlap concept, and I have found just so many great nuggets from listening to you guys. Number two is I remember when you approached me at Hatch about starting a podcast, and I said, hey, that's why we built that podcasting studio at Coastal, and you guys took it up, and here we are. You've done 100 broadcasts, and now you're on the way to 200. And lastly, I just want to say that I just appreciate the way you guys do business, and I want to associate with you. So Pro 356 is glad to be back as a promoter and sponsor of the Overlap podcast.
Hey guys, this is Keith. Let me break down a scenario for you. Are you a business owner that is overwhelmed by the options of investing, but you're being told you need to invest in retirement, you need to invest in mutual funds, you need to buy some single stocks? Well, I have your fix. C2 Wealth Strategies, ran by our friend Wes Cody. Their website is c2wealth.com. If you are looking at investing at all and are confused by it, give them a call today. They will be happy to handle whatever you need. He's brought up very specific things that I need to be working on as a business owner in my investing life. Let him do that same thing for you. c2wealth.com, or go to the overlaplife.com page and click on sponsors.